Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Welcome back to the Wobble Enjoy Sports channel. If you're new around here, I hope I can get you to consider to like the content and subscribe to the channel. But if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. Let's look at the St. George Illawarra Dragons fixture for 2024. The preseason challenge for the St. George Illawarra Dragons looks like this. In week number 1, they take on the South Sydney Rabbitohs at Kogarah for the Charity Shield. Usually this game takes place in week number 2, but because South Sydney are going to Las Vegas, most of their team, most of their superstars will not be able to take place in week number 2. That's my line of thinking anyways. So the Charity Shield, usually in week 2 of preseason, is going to be in week number 1. Therefore, the Dragons' opponents for week number 2 is the West Tigers, and the game will be played out at Glen Willow Oval in Mudgee. South Sydney, the West Tigers, they are the 2 opponents for the Dragons in the preseason challenge. St. George Illawarra Dragons are going to be working on their tan to start off 2024. They got back-to-back away games in round 1 and 2 in the state of Queensland, and in round number 3, they have another Queensland opponent that they got to come up against. But let's start at the start. In round number 1, they take on the Gold Coast Titans on Saturday Night Football at Seabus Super Stadium. 1 week later, on the Sunday afternoon, as a matter of fact, a twilight fixture at KO Stadium in Redcliffe, the Dragons take on the Dolphins. Their first home game comes in round number 3 at Kogarah. The Dragons versus the North Queensland Cowboys, Saturday twilight fixture. 7 days later, they have their first home game in the Gong for 2024, where they host the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles. And then finally, to round out the first section for 2024, in round 5, the Dragons take on the Newcastle Knights from McDonald Jones Stadium. It's not a terribly hard draw. It is a prick of a start, though, to have 2 away games back-to-back in Queensland. But there are some games, if the Dragons, under new coach Shane Flanagan, if they are going to be as fair dinkum as they possibly can be, I think that they could snare an upset victory in one of these first 5 weeks, possibly even 2. But either way, it's not the hardest, it's not the easiest, it's just somewhere in between for the St. George Illawarra Dragons' start to 2024. Section number 2 is as follows. Round 5 concluded with an away game. Round 6 is an away game as well. So they're doing things in back-to-backs to start 2024. So in round number 6, they are away to the West Tigers at Campbelltown Stadium on a Sunday. So that is a huge 10-day turnaround for the Dragons to rest up. In round number 7, they are back at home. As a matter of fact, they've technically got 2 home games now. Round number 7, they take on the Warriors on Friday night footy, so a short turnaround for the Dragons after a bit of a long rest between rounds 5 and 6. But in round number 7, they take on the New Zealand Warriors, and then they are the home side on Anzac Day for when they host the Sydney Roosters on the Thursday this year. Kickoff at 4 p.m. And this game last year and a hell of a lot of these other previous Anzac Day clashes have been insanely enjoyable. I'm sure this one will offer up the same entertainment value as well. In round number 9, another huge turnaround as well, another long 11-day turnaround. They are taking on the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks in the Great Southern Derby out at PointsBet Stadium on Sunday afternoon, Channel 9 footy. In round number 10, they host South Sydney Saturday twilight at Kogarah. So inside this section here, they have 2 away games. Well, technically anyway, they are the home side at Allianz Stadium to take on the Roosters, but we all know the eastern suburbs' home ground is Moore Park. It is Allianz Stadium. So technically it is 3 games, home games inside section number 2, but this little part here is a lot tougher than the first section for sure. Warriors, Roosters, Sharks and South Sydney back to back, and look, to be honest as well, the Tigers at Campbelltown, an away game as well. This one could prove to be pretty difficult. I think they now absolutely need to bag 2 victories at the very least inside the first 5 weeks of the competition. Section 3 for 2024 sees the Dragons perform a magic trick for Magic Round. They're not going to be there in round number 11. So let's move on to round number 12, and it's Thursday night football for the Dragons. They travel to Accor Stadium to take on the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. Prime time Bulldogs Dragons on Thursday night football. 1 week later, actually, on the Saturday twilight fixture, in round number 13. This game will be Origin affected. Penrith versus St George Illawarra Dragons from Bluebet Stadium. Tough ask, especially if Ben Hunt's not going to be participating in Origin, which is a long shot. But then again, Penrith, you'd imagine that at least 4 of their players will not be playing in this game, so could provide to be a 50-50 opportunity for the Dragons to spring a major upset. In round number 14, they take on the West Tigers down at Wollongong on Friday night football. And in round 15, section 3 for 2024 rounds out with a trip to Brookvale Oval, Sunday afternoon footy, and that's another longish turnaround from Friday to Sunday the week after. This section here, I think they could nab at least 3 victories. At the very least, they're walking away with 2 competition points already with a bye, with all due respect. But yeah, that's not too bad. There is that trip to Penrith and a trip to Manly, but that's not too bad of a section for the Dragons. The 4th phase for the St George Illawarra Dragons from round 16 through to round 20 starts with a bye in round number 16. On Sunday the 30th of June from Cogra in round 17, it's the Dragons versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins' first ever trip to Cogra. 1 week later, still on the same day, Sunday, round 18, they are back at Allianz Stadium for the second time this season, where they do take on the Roosters, this time as the away side. On Saturday, the week after, in round number 19, so that's 2 back-to-back away games for the Dragons again, they are playing the Brisbane Broncos at Suncorp Stadium, and this is all around Origin time, so maybe there will be players rested for this game, but we'll see what happens. And then in round 20, they have their 3rd and final bye for 2024. So from round 21 and from the 5th and final phase of their season, it is truly all systems go. And just as a quick thought to this phase, so there's only 3 games inside 5 or 6 weeks for the Dragons, and those 3 games are, well, 2 of them are away to the Roosters and the Broncos, and then they host the Dolphins. If there to be any hope of either avoiding the spoon or getting into the frame to fight for a top 8 spot, that game against the Dolphins in round 17 could be huge. And while they do garner 4 competition points due to the bye, if they don't get a win inside the 4th phase, it's going to get pretty dire for the Dragons quickly. If the Dragons are to make a run for the top 8 successfully, this is how their run to the finals looks like. After their bye, they start their campaign in round number 21 against the Penrith Panthers on Sunday footy, kickoff at 2 p.m. 1 week later, in round number 22, they have a trip down to Amy Park to take on the Melbourne Storm, a Saturday twilight fixture. 7 days later, in round 23, they have the start of 3 straight home games. That's a nice little feather in the cap. Round number 23 sees the Bulldogs come to Kogarah, and that is one of the Channel 9 Saturday night contests that's been selected. 8 days later, round number 24, they host the Gold Coast Titans from the Gong. And another 7 days later, they host the Sharks in the Great Southern Derby on Channel 9 Sunday afternoon footy. Round number 26, they are on the road for one last time for 2024. They take on the Parramatta Eels Saturday 3 p.m, round 26, Saturday the 31st of August, and their season concludes with a match against the Canberra Raiders from Kogarah in round number 27. So in the run to the finals, the Dragons, they have 5 home games, 2 away, one of them being down in Melbourne, one of them just up the road towards Parramatta, or west out to Parramatta. But a couple of those teams, as I mentioned, the Storm is in there, but so too are the Panthers and the Sharks, and the Raiders usually give them, the St. George Illawarra Dragons, a hell of a lot of curry. But that little run there, they might be able to pick up a handful of victories. I will always reiterate, there is no easy draw in the NRL, but from the fixtures that I have seen so far, I think the Dragons have the nicest, and it's good for them because, with all due respect, there isn't a lot of expectations on them this year, and they have a semi-decent draw. They do take on the Roosters twice, and that second time is a home game at the Roosters' home stadium of Allianz. They do take on the Penrith Panthers twice though, albeit on the one occasion it will be an Origin affected contest. And their start to the season, if they don't nab a victory or two inside the first 5 weeks, it could spell trouble for their season. It is 2 straight games away in Queensland, and then you've got Sea Eagles, Cowboys and Knights coming for you, and you finished second last the year before, so they need to get one at the very least to start 2024. Overall, it's not too bad of a draw for the St. George Illawarra Dragons, and I hope that they can do it, man. I hope that they can avoid that wooden spoon. Hope you're enjoying this Overlooking fixture series, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you very much. Take care. Adios.